I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine it's January 1st. You have that fresh notebook, a nice pen, and you write down a resolution. This is the year I learned Spanish.
Or, this is the year I finally learned to code.
Exactly. Now fast forward 3 months. In a normal timeline, maybe you've learned a few phrases or you've watched a couple of YouTube tutorials, but you're probably not holding fluent conversations or building apps.
Not even close.
But what if I told you that in those same 3 months, you could be conversationally fluent?
Or, to raise the stakes even higher, imagine mastering the entire MIT computer science curriculum, which usually takes 4 years of grueling undergraduate work in a single year.
A single year. Or, and this one gets me, going from being absolutely terrified of public speaking, I mean, shaking hands, dry mouth, the works,
The whole thing?
to reaching the finals of a world championship in public speaking in just 6 months.
Sounds like the plot of a sci-fi movie, right?
Yeah.
Like The Matrix, you just plug a cable into the back of your head, upload the Kung Fu program, and boom.
And 5 seconds later, you're a master.
Exactly. It sounds completely impossible. It sounds like a scam.
It really does.
But here's the thing, and the reason we are here today, these are real examples. These are things real people have actually done.
And that's the most fascinating part. They didn't do it because they had some, mutant gene for genius. They didn't have photographic memories.
They didn't have 200 IQs.
No. In fact, that's the most important takeaway from the source material we're diving into today. These people aren't mutants. They are strategists. They achieve these impossible feats because they approach the act of learning in a completely different way than, 99% of the population.
Right. Most of us are stuck on what you might call the traditional path. We sign up for a class that meets once a week. We buy a textbook that looks nice on the nightstand, but
Mostly just gathers dust.
yeah, we watch videos passively while we're doing laundry. It's slow, it's low intensity, and frankly, it's frustrating.
It is. Because you feel like you're studying, but you never really feel like you're improving. You're just treading water.
Exactly. You're moving your arms and legs, but you aren't going anywhere.
I feel seen. I have definitely been there. But today, we are tossing that slow lane out the window. We are doing a deep dive into the concept of ultralearning.
This comes from the book by Scott H. Young, and it's a concept that is heavily associated with James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits.
So this isn't just about learning, it's about systems.
Right. And to define it clearly right off the bat, ultralearning is a strategy of aggressive, self-directed learning. Those are the two key words.
Aggressive.
And self-directed. It is not waiting for a teacher to spoon-feed you. It's about taking total control of your own development and optimizing every single step to get results that look like magic to the outside world.
Aggressive and self-directed. I mean, it sounds intense.
It is intense. And I want to be clear about the tone here. You mentioned downloading knowledge earlier. While the results of ultralearning are fast, the process is not easy. It requires a willingness to be uncomfortable. It requires a lot of effort. But the payoff is that you get years of results in months.
That is a trade-off I think a lot of us would take. So our mission for this deep dive is to break down the actual blueprint. Scott Young lays out these key principles: meta-learning, focus, directness, drill, retrieval, feedback, and retention. By the end of this hour, we want you to have a toolkit so that the next time you want to learn something, you don't just study it.
You attack it.
You attack it. We're going to turn you into an ultra learner.
Let's do it.
Let's get into it. The first principle is something that I think most people skip entirely. I know I do. It's called meta-learning.
Meta-learning. It sounds a bit academic, learning about learning. But it is, I would argue, the most critical step.
The source uses a really good analogy here. It compares learning a new skill to hiking through a dense, unknown forest.
Right. And think about how most people approach a new subject. Let's say you want to learn, I don't know, astrophysics.
Okay, big one.
The average person just walks into the forest. They pick up a random book, or they click on a Wikipedia article, or they watch a Neil deGrasse Tyson video. They just start walking.
You wander, and maybe you find something cool, or maybe you walk in circles for 3 weeks and, get eaten by a bear.
Exactly. You get lost in the details before you even understand the big picture. Ultralearners do not wander.
What do they do?
Before they take a single step into the forest, they draw a map.
They map the territory.
Yes. They spend a significant amount of time analyzing the skill itself, how it's structured, what the common pitfalls are, what resources exist before they actually try to learn the skill.
There's a story in the notes about a linguist named Dan Everett that illustrates this perfectly, and honestly, this story blows my mind every time I read it. Can you walk us through what this guy can do?
This is just a classic example of extreme meta-learning. So Dan Everett is a linguist who does field research in the Amazon. He can go into a tribe where he doesn't speak a word of the language and where they don't speak a word of English or Portuguese, and he can start holding a basic conversation within 30 minutes.
30 minutes. It takes me 30 minutes to decide what I want to order for dinner. How is that even possible? He's not, like, telepathic.
No, he's not telepathic. He's systematic. He doesn't start from zero. He starts with a meta-learning blueprint.
A blueprint.
He knows, from studying linguistics generally, how languages work. He knows they all have nouns, they all have verbs, they all have a way to indicate possession.
So he has a framework in his head already. He just needs to hang the new data onto the existing hooks.
Precisely. So when he sits down with a tribesman, he takes control. He points at a rock. The tribesman says the word for rock. Everett writes it down. He points to a stick. He gets the word for stick.
That's enough.
Then, and this is the clever part, he drops the rock. He throws a stick. Now he's eliciting verbs.
So he's building a database in real time.
But because he knows the structure, he knows to look for subject, verb, object, or subject, object, verb, he can decode the grammar almost instantly. A normal person would just hear noise.
Right.
Everett hears patterns because he did the meta-learning work beforehand.
So for him, it's not a mystery. It's a fill-in-the-blank puzzle.
Exactly. And you don't have to be a genius linguist to apply this. The book gives us a very specific rule to follow. It's called the 10% rule.
This one hurts my soul a little bit, I have to be honest.
Why is that?
Because I'm impatient. The rule is that you should spend approximately 10% of your total expected learning time just researching how to learn before you actually start learning. So if I plan to spend 100 hours learning photography, you're saying I need to spend 10 hours just Googling how to learn photography. It feels like I'm wasting time.
It feels like procrastination, right? But think about the alternative. How many times have you bought a textbook, read 3 chapters, realized it was way too advanced, then bought a beginner book, realized it was too simple, tried a video course, got bored?
Okay, stop. You're describing my entire life. I have a bookshelf full of false starts.
That is the cost of skipping the 10%. That 10 hours of research prevents you from wasting 50 hours on bad resources and ineffective methods. You are sharpening the axe before you start chopping the tree.
Okay, so what are we actually doing during this 10% time? We aren't just staring at the wall.
No. You are answering 3 core questions: the why, the what, and the how.
Let's break those down. The why seems pretty obvious. It's your motivation.
It is, but you need to be really specific. Are you learning French because you want to read Proust in the original text? Or are you learning French because you're going to Paris next week and just want to order coffee?
Those are 2 totally different projects.
Exactly. The why dictates the intensity and the focus. Then you have the what. This is where you list the concepts, facts, and procedures you need to master. You strip the skill down to its components.
So if I'm learning photography, the what isn't just take good pictures. It's understand ISO, understand aperture, learn Lightroom.
Learn composition rules.
Right.
You make a syllabus.
My own syllabus.
And finally, the how. This is where you find the resources. Which books are the best? Which courses have the highest ratings? What specific exercises will I do?
It's essentially becoming the architect of your own education. You aren't walking into a classroom and waiting for a teacher to hand you the syllabus.
You are writing the syllabus. That is the essence of being self-directed. If you wait for someone else to tell you what to learn, you are already losing the game.
Okay, so we've drawn our map. We know the territory. We have our syllabus. Now we have to actually do the work. And this brings us to the second big hurdle, which I think is harder now than at any point in human history. Focus.
The source calls this the mental knife.
I love that image.
It's perfect. Focus is the knife that cuts through complexity. You can have the best map in the world, but if you can't focus, you aren't going anywhere. You're just standing at the trailhead checking Instagram.
And checking email. And checking the news. Our knives are pretty dull these days. But the source introduces us to a hero from the 18th century who had a laser-sharp mental knife, despite having an environment that was practically designed to distract her.
Mary Somerville.
Tell us about Mary, because whenever I feel like I just don't have the right workspace, I think of her and feel a little shameful.
Mary Somerville is incredible. She was a Scottish mathematician born in the late 1700s. Now, you have to understand the context. She was a woman in a time when society actively disapproved of women studying science.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Her family actually hid her candles so she couldn't read math books at night.
No way.
So she's fighting the culture.
Right.
But she's also fighting her domestic reality.
Right.
As an adult, she was running a household, raising children. She had social obligations, neighbors stopping by for tea, family drama. She didn't have a quiet office at a university. She didn't have noise-canceling headphones.
She worked in the living room with
What
kids
happened?
screaming and people walking in and out.
Constantly. But she developed this incredible ability to toggle her focus. She wrote about this. She said that if a friend came to visit, she would stop her work immediately. She would be polite, pour the tea, have the chat.
Okay.
But the literal second that friend walked out the door, she would resume her work exactly where she left off.
Like putting a mark into a book.
Right, that's the quote. She didn't need 20 minutes to get back in the zone.
Yeah.
She could switch it on and off instantly.
That is a superpower.
And that ability allowed her to translate and expand Pierre-Simon Laplace's work on celestial mechanics. Laplace actually told her she was the only woman in the world who understood his work.
Wow. Okay, so for those of us who aren't Mary Somerville, who struggle to even start the work because we're procrastinating, what's the fix? Because procrastination is usually why we lose focus before we even begin.
The source makes a really important point here. Procrastination is not a time management problem. It's an emotional problem.
Say more about that. I thought it was just me being lazy.
No. We don't avoid the task because we don't have time. We avoid it because the task makes us feel something bad. Maybe it feels difficult, so we feel incompetent. Maybe it's boring. Maybe we're afraid we'll fail.
So we check our phone to get a hit of dopamine and avoid the negative emotion?
Exactly. We're self-medicating our anxiety with distraction. So the fix isn't a better calendar, it's a lower barrier. The book suggests the 5-minute rule.
I use this. It's the only way I get anything done.
You just tell yourself, I'm going to do this for 5 minutes. That's it. If I hate it after 5 minutes, I can stop.
And the trick, of course, is that you almost never stop.
Right, because the anxiety is highest before you start. Once you're 5 minutes in, the monster turns out to be just a file of paperwork, and you keep going. You just need to trick your brain past that initial threshold of pain.
Now, there's one more nuance on focus that I found really interesting regarding arousal levels. I always thought that to focus, I needed dead silence, a library.
Right, but the source says that's not always true. It depends on the task. This is really helpful for optimizing your environment.
Mm-hmm.
If you are doing a task that is simple or mechanical, like entering data into a spreadsheet or filing papers, you actually benefit from high arousal.
So a noisy coffee shop, loud music, chaotic energy, that helps.
Yes, that external energy keeps you alert and prevents you from getting bored and drifting off. But if you are doing a task that requires complex problem solving, like learning a new math concept or debugging code, you need low arousal.
Silence, solitude.
Because the task itself is taking up all your cognitive bandwidth. If you add background noise, your brain overloads. So don't just say, I need focus. Ask yourself, what kind of focus does this specific task need, and match your environment to it.
Okay, so we have a map, and we have the focus to execute. Now we arrive at what I think is the most, controversial part of the philosophy. It's the section where we realize that almost everything we learned in school was wrong.
Section 3, directness.
This is the principle that explains why you can take 4 years of Spanish in high school and still not be able to ask for directions to the bathroom in Madrid.
It's called the transfer problem. And psychologists have studied this for decades. The basic finding is that skills learned in a classroom context, where you are answering multiple choice questions or memorizing definitions, often do not transfer to real-life situations.
So we think we're learning the skill, but we're actually just learning how to pass the test about the skill.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You learn the proxy, not the thing itself. And there is a devastating story in the source material about an architecture student named Vasil Jaiswal that really drives this home.
This poor guy. He did everything right, didn't he?
He did. He was the model student. He went to architecture school, got good grades, graduated with his degree. He knew all the theory. He understood design history. He sent out hundreds of resumes to architecture firms. Crickets. 0 job offers.
That is a nightmare. You spend all that money, you put in the time, and the market just says, no thanks. Why?
He eventually got some feedback from a firm. They told him, look, you know the theory, but you don't know how to work. He didn't know the industry standard software, specifically a program called Revit, and he didn't know how to create the actual technical documentation that firms use every single day.
So his school knowledge was abstract. It didn't transfer to the work reality.
Exactly. So he was at a crossroads. He could have gone back to school for a master's, which is what most people would do.
Yeah.
But instead, he decided to become an ultralearner.
Okay.
He applied the principle of directness.
What do you do?
He realized he needed to get as close to the real work as possible. He couldn't get hired as an architect, so he got a job at a print shop.
A print shop? That seems random.
A specific print shop that printed blueprints for architecture firms.
Ah, that is clever. So he's not designing, but he is holding the finished product in his hands all day long.
Exactly. He could see exactly what the professionals were producing. Oh, this is how they label the electrical outlets. This is how they render the shadows. He was exposing himself to the real standard.
And what about the software?
Then he taught himself the software Revit, not by watching tutorials, but by designing a specific building for his portfolio.
He didn't practice the tool. He used the tool to do a real project.
That distinction is everything. He built a portfolio that looked exactly like the work the firms were doing. He sent that new portfolio to 2 firms.
Yeah.
Both offered him a job.
That is the power of directness. It cuts out the middleman. It says, don't study the thing, do the thing.
And this is the actionable advice for everyone listening. If you want to learn a language, stop using the flashcard app. Put it down. Go find a human being and try to speak.
But expert, that sounds terrifying.
It is terrifying.
It feels much safer to watch the video. It feels safer to stay in the app with the cute owl.
Of course it does. Passive learning feels safe. It's comfortable. You can't fail a YouTube video. But the source has a very provocative statement about this. If you are comfortable, you probably aren't learning very fast.
That's the sticky note for the fridge. Comfort is the enemy of progress.
Direct learning is uncomfortable. It's awkward. You will feel stupid. But that discomfort is the signal that your brain is actually rewiring itself.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a second. If I just dive into the deep end, if I just start speaking Spanish without knowing any words, I'm not learning. I'm just drowning. I'm just making noise.
That's a fair point. You can't just flail around. And that brings us to the next principle, which works in tandem with directness. It's called drill.
Okay, so how do directness and drill work together?
Think of it like a professional athlete. Directness is the game. You
Yep.
play the soccer match. That's the real thing. But while you're playing, you realize, man, every time I get the ball on my left foot, I lose it.
You identify a bottleneck, a weakness.
Right. So what do? You don't just keep playing games hoping it gets better. You stop the game. You go to the practice field and you run drills.
You kick the ball with your left foot 1,000 times.
You isolate the weakness and you attack it. And then you go back to the game.
So the cycle.
Exactly. It's a cycle. Direct practice, identify weakness, drill the weakness, reintegrate into direct practice.
The source gives us a historical masterclass in this with Benjamin Franklin. And I didn't realize Ben Franklin was such a rigorous self-improver when it came to his writing.
He was obsessive. He wanted to be a persuasive writer, but he had no teacher and no formal education. So he created drills for himself. One of his favorites involved a magazine called The Spectator.
Which had the best writing of the time.
The absolute best. So he would take an article, read it, and make short notes on the meaning of each sentence, just brief cues. Then he would put the original article away and let it sit for a few days.
So he would forget the specific phrasing.
Right. Then he would take his notes and try to rewrite the entire article from scratch. He was forcing himself to reconstruct the logical flow and the eloquence of a professional writer using only his own mind.
He's reverse engineering the thought process.
Yes. And then this is the key. He would compare his version to the original. He would see where his vocabulary was weak or where his transitions were clunky.
And he didn't stop there. He did something with poetry too, right? What was that about?
He did. He realized he needed a better vocabulary. So he took those same articles and converted them into verse. He turned them into poems.
Why poems? That seems inefficient.
It's actually brilliant. Poetry has constraints. You need a word that rhymes with night, or you need a word that fits a specific rhythm. It forces you to dig deep into your mental thesaurus to find synonyms.
You can't just use the first word that pops into your head.
No, it's a drill designed specifically to expand word choice. It's resistance training for your vocabulary.
Okay, so the lesson is, don't just practice, drill. Find the thing you are bad at, isolate it, and shammer it until it becomes a strength.
Precisely.
But to know what to drill, you need to know what you suck at. And that brings us to the part of the process that I think for most people hurts the most, feedback.
The section titled, Don't Dodge Punches.
We all say we want feedback. Hey, let me know what you think of this. But usually what we really want is validation.
We want someone to say, wow, you're smart, this is great.
Exactly. But ultra learners are different. They crave the harsh stuff because they know it's the only way to improve. The source points to Chris Rock, the comedian. Now, Chris Rock is a legend. He sells at stadiums. He could easily just write some jokes in his mansion, assume they are funny because he's Chris Rock, and go on tour.
He could, but he doesn't. When he is building a new hour of material, he goes to the Comedy Cellar in New York, a small, intimate club.
Right.
He walks on stage, often unannounced, wearing a hoodie, holding a crumpled yellow legal pad.
And he bombs.
He bombs hard. He warns the audience, this is going to be bad. He reads jokes off the pad. He mumbles. He isn't there to perform. He's there to test.
He's data mining.
He watches the audience like a hawk. When do they laugh? When do they shift in their seats? When do they check their phones? If a joke doesn't work, he crosses it out. If it gets a chuckle, he circles it.
He is stripping away his ego. He's willing to stand there and not be Chris Rock the star so that he can make the material better.
That is the key. He isn't protecting his ego. He is protecting the quality of the final product.
Now, the source breaks feedback down into 3 types. And this is important because not all feedback is created equal.
Right. First, you have outcome feedback. This is just pass-fail. Did the audience laugh? Did the code compile?
It tells you how you did, but not what to fix.
Correct. It's useful for calibration, but it's not enough. Then you have informational feedback. This tells you what you did wrong. You used the wrong verb tense, or your error is on line 45.
Better. It points to the problem.
But the gold standard is corrective feedback. This tells you what is wrong and exactly how to fix it. This is what a great coach gives you. You're lifting your elbow too early on the sling. Tuck it in like this.
So that's the one you want to hunt for.
That's the one.
What about the feedback like you're a genius or you're lazy?
That is ego feedback. Ignore it.
Ignore it, even if it's positive.
Completely. Whether it's praise or an insult, it gives you zero data on how to improve the task. If someone says, you're smart, that doesn't tell you how to solve the calculus problem. If they say you're dumb, it doesn't help either. Focus entirely on the task, not the person.
That is such a hard mental shift, separating your self-worth from your performance.
It is. But if you take feedback personally, you will stop seeking it. And if you stop seeking feedback, your learning stalls. You have to be willing to look foolish in the short term to be excellent in the long term.
Okay, so we're deep in the process now. We are drilling, we are getting hammered with feedback, and we are improving. But now we have to deal with the brain's hardware. How do we actually store this information so we don't lose it?
This brings us to the principle of retrieval. And this is one of the most counterintuitive parts of learning science. If I ask you, host, how do you study for a test? What do you visualize?
I see myself sitting at a desk, reading the textbook, maybe highlighting the key sentences in yellow, rereading my notes. I'm trying to, push the information into my head.
Right. You are filling the bucket.
Right.
But the science shows that learning doesn't happen when you put information in. It happens when you struggle to get information out.
Wait, really? So reading the textbook isn't learning?
It's exposure. But deep learning, the kind that sticks, happens during retrieval practice. It happens when you close the book and ask yourself, what did I just read? And you force your brain to reconstruct it.
It's a struggle.
It's the struggle. The source tells the story of Srinivasa Ramanujan here.
Yeah.
And honestly, the story is borderline unbelievable.
Ramanujan is a legend.
He was a mathematical genius from India in the early 20th century, grew up in extreme poverty. He didn't have access to a university library or professors.
Right.
He managed to get his hands on one book, a synopsis of elementary results in pure and applied mathematics.
Which sounds like the driest, most boring book imaginable.
It was worse than dry. It was just a list. It contained thousands of theorems, but it didn't have the proofs. It didn't explain why they were true or how to solve them. It just gave the answer.
So he had the what, but not the how?
Exactly. So to understand the book, he had to derive the solutions himself. He had to invent the math to prove the theorems. He treated the book not as reading material, but as a series of thousands of puzzles.
So he wasn't studying math, he was creating math to match the answers he saw.
And that intense cognitive struggle, that constant retrieval and generation of knowledge from his own mind is what made him a singular genius. Later, when he was discovered and sent his notebooks to G.H. Hardy at Cambridge.
One of the best mathematicians in the world.
Hardy said the formulas must be true because no one would have had the imagination to invent them.
Wow. And this isn't just for geniuses, right? There is actual science backing this up for normal people.
Oh, absolutely. There are studies showing that students who use retrieval practice, simply closing the book and testing themselves, retain about 50% more information than students who just create concept maps or review their notes.
50% is massive. That is the difference between passing and failing a class.
It is. The concept is called desirable difficulties. When your brain has to sweat to find the answer, it builds a stronger neural pathway. If your study session feels easy and fluid, you probably aren't learning much.
The struggle is the point.
That should be the motto of ultralearning.
Okay, final principle, we've learned it. But human brains are like leaky buckets. We forget things incredibly fast. How do we stop the leak?
Retention. And for the ultimate example of retention, we have to talk about Nigel Richards.
This is my favorite story in the whole stack. Please tell them what this guy did.
Nigel Richards won the French World Scrabble Championship.
Okay, sounds impressive. A little nerdy, but impressive.
But here is the kicker. Nigel Richards does not speak French.
I still can't get over this.
Yeah.
He won the Scrabble Championship of a language he cannot speak. He can't order a croissant.
He might be able to order croissant now, but at the time, no. He couldn't hold a conversation. He memorized the French Scrabble dictionary.
The whole thing.
That is 386,000 word forms, and he did it in 9 weeks.
9 weeks. Does he have a photographic memory? Is he a robot? What is going on?
He claims he isn't. He says he just likes looking at things.
Yeah.
But if you analyze what he did, he used extreme retention strategies. He would literally ride a bicycle while mentally reviewing word lists in his head.
Wait, he's cycling and reviewing lists at the same time.
Yes. The cycling helps, he said, but it points to the mechanisms of fighting forgetting. There are 3 big ones we should mention.
Let's run through them.
First is spacing. You cannot cram. If you have 10 hours to study, doing 10 one-hour sessions spaced out over a week is infinitely better than one 10-hour marathon.
Right.
Your brain needs sleep in between to consolidate the memories.
Okay, spacing. What else?
Proceduralization. This is turning facts into habits. Think about typing. You don't have to think, where's the A key?
Right.
You just do it. It has become a procedure. Procedural knowledge lasts much longer than declarative knowledge.
So making the skill automatic.
Yes. And finally, overlearning. This means you keep practicing even after you get it right. Most people stop studying the moment they get a perfect score on the quiz. Ultralearners keep drilling past perfection. That pushes the memory deeper into long-term storage.
It's like a concert pianist who can play the piece in their sleep. They've overlearned it.
Exactly. They've burned it into their nervous system.
So bringing it all together, we've gone from meta learning, drawing the map, to sharpening our focus, diving into directness, drilling our weaknesses, seeking harsh feedback, testing ourselves constantly, and then locking it in with retention strategies.
It's a complete ecosystem. Each part supports the others.
It really is. And, looking back at all this, the biggest shift for me isn't even the specific techniques, it's the attitude.
What do you mean by that?
It's the shift from treating learning as something that happens to you, like sitting in a class and waiting to be taught to, treating it as an aggressive project, something you build.
That is the core message. Passive learning is watching. Active learning, ultralearning is doing, testing, and drilling. It's about agency.
And it connects back to James Clear's philosophy too, doesn't it? The atomic habits guy.
It does. Clear talks about systems over goals. Ultralearning isn't just a goal, I want to learn French. It's a system. It's a set of habits and protocols you install in your life.
There is a quote from the book that I think perfectly sums up why anyone should actually bother doing this. Because honestly, it sounds hard. It sounds exhausting. Why go through the trouble?
The quote is, "Your deepest moments of happiness don't come from doing easy things. They come from realizing your potential and overcoming your own limiting beliefs about yourself."
That's it. That's the why. It's not just about the skill. It's about proving to yourself that you can.
When you realize you can learn something hard, something you thought was impossible, it changes how you see yourself. It changes your identity. You stop being someone who isn't good at math and start being someone who can learn anything.
So here is our challenge to you, the listener. We don't want you to just listen to this deep dive, nod along, and say, that was interesting. We want you to pick one thing.
Just one skill.
Just one skill where you've been passive. Maybe you've been dabbling in guitar for years, or half-heartedly learning Excel.
And ask yourself, how can I apply directness to this tomorrow? What is the scary, real-world version of practicing this skill?
And then go do it for 5 minutes, just 5 minutes.
And hey, if you decide to memorize the French Scrabble dictionary, let us know.
Please do, I'll race you. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into ultralearning. Go map your forest. We'll see you next time.